All right, we're going to call to order the Whitley County Board of Zoning Appeals, the regular meeting of Tuesday, February 27th, 2024. Have the roll call, please.
Jack Green.
Here.
Kelley Sheiss.
Here.
Danny Wilkinson.
Here.
Doug Wright.
Here.
And Joe Wolf.
Here. Okay, board, we received a copy of the minutes of our last regular meeting, which was January 23rd, 2024. If you've looked it over, any additions or corrections to the minutes as presented? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve them.
So moved.
Moved by Doug.
Second.
Seconded by Joe, that we approve the minutes of our last regular meeting of January 23rd, 2024. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, those are approved by a vote of 5-0, with all attending members voting in favor. Okay, at this time we need to administer an oath. Anyone who thinks they may speak needs to stand up and be sworn in now. All petitioners, anyone with questions, any opposition, anyone who thinks they may speak needs to stand at this time, and our attorney Liz Deckard will swear you in. You a petitioner? Probably, huh?
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that any statements you make before the board tonight will be the truth? If so, state I do.
I do.
All right, thank you. You may be seated. Old business, I believe we have none. Okay, we'll get right into new business. Give you an idea how we run the meeting. We'll read your petition. The staff will give the staff report. Then we'll ask you to come to the podium, state your name and address, and what it is you'd like to do. Anyone with any questions or any opposition will have an opportunity to speak after the petitioner. After the petitioner. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions and make a presentation yourself if you so desire. Okay? The first petition is petition 24W Variance 1, filed by Jason and Sandra Barbknecht. Owners of the subject property are requesting approval of a Development Standards Variance to allow for encroachment into the side yard setback for construction of a storage building. The property is located at 6649 West, 800 North in Section 32 of Etna Troy Township. Staff?
Mr. President, I need to recuse myself as I'm an adjoining landowner to this request.
Okay, so Kelley Sheiss, and she's an adjoining landowner to this petitioner, is not going to vote. So that means there's 4 board members. It takes 3 votes, either for or against, for any action to occur. Anything less than 3 votes for or against, the petition will have to be reheard. Okay, staff?
Thank you for that information, Mr. Chairman. So going to the summary of the staff report. This is at 6649 West, 800 North. There's not actually structure there yet, so this is a pre-assigned address. Zone JDG agricultural. What is being proposed is to construct a 24 by 40 foot storage building. It is the only structure on the property, which by policy means that we treat it as the primary structure and apply the primary structure setbacks, despite it being a storage building, which is normally an accessory use. And that's why basically the nature of the variance. The proposed setbacks are 40 feet. Side is, for the front side is 10 feet, rear is very large. The requirements are 40 feet for the front, 25 for the primary side setback, however 10 for if this was an accessory structure, and then the rear is well met. So again, highlighted there in bold is the code that is being varied from. For reference, the outlying property is the subject property. You have 650 west there toward on the right side of the screen, 800 north there on top of the property. Closer view showing the topography. This actually does have drain lines and floodplain turned on as well, just nothing in the immediate vicinity. You can see that there is a significant draw that comes through the western middle of the property, and basically it does slope off. So the most buildable area is the northeastern corner, but it's a relatively large area, not quite as small as what we sometimes see with proposed buildings and topography. The submitted plot plan there in yellow and black is proposed building. This is based upon a survey. There wasn't a surveyed plot plan produced, which if you feel like there's more detail, that would be the next step, but this is typically sufficient, being an actual survey as a base. And then what I did was take their dimensions and place it upon the GIS. Keep in mind that GIS is not infallible, does have plus or minus some feet of precision, but based upon the measurements on the survey and what I measured on GIS, it does seem like GIS is relatively close. So the red outline there is approximately where the measurements on the GIS place the proposed building. Going through things, petitioner has indicated the desire to avoid cutting down trees for this storage building. They do operate a business that would, I presume, be using this storage building. However, a business would not be operating out of the building as proposed. Again, that's an important distinction that I draw, because if you were living in it or operating a business out of it, that would become a primary structure, which would be required to have a 25-foot setback. It would be a primary use. So to that end, staff's suggested condition with this, and being a variance, we don't normally see conditions with variances, but tonight we've got a couple. I am recommending that if this is approved as proposed, that a zoning commitment be recorded that the building would not be occupied as a primary use, either residence or business, unless the setback is compliant with the minimum development standard. And it's worded that way in case they wanted to buy additional property to gain that 25 feet or something like that. But basically the intent is to say that this is proposed to be used essentially as an accessory use, has an accessory structure setback at 10 feet, and therefore it needs to stay that way. And if they construct a primary structure elsewhere, house, business, whatever, elsewhere on the property, then this unquestionably just becomes a normal accessory structure. It's the fact that this is first is why the variance comes up. Going into the various criteria, you've read that. The biggest one that I want to highlight, well, actually it's the use and value and the strict calculation. So numbers 2 and 3, use and value. When you have a structure close to an adjacent property line, particularly in this case, or specifically in this case, a field, there's potential for conflicts, spraying in the field, dust generated, and so on. As a essentially storage use, that effect's probably minimized. But if this was a primary use, that effect's probably more significant. And then that could have recourse back on the adjacent property owner as well, creating some disputes. So again, that kind of leads back to why I'm suggesting that condition of having a zoning commitment. And then in terms of strict application with practical difficulties, there are some practical difficulties in that there are a lot of trees that they want to save. There are some topographic issues that do constrain the location, but as you saw there on the aerial, it does seem like there could be 15 feet worth of additional setback that could be gained if they push it farther into those trees. So not totally comfortable with the idea of there being site-specific practical difficulties. There are possibly difficulties, but I'm not sure how significant they are. That's for you to review and consider. So with that, any questions for me at this point?
All right, petitioner or your representative, come to the podium, state your name and address, and
Jason
what you'd like to
Barbknecht, 215 North Etna Road, Columbia City. This would be my secondary property that we've got for recreational purposes for hunting or mushroom hunting or whatever we have on to do. If you could bring up that picture of the overhead from the GIS. So I agree with everything Nathan said. This is going to be storage only. I will
This one
store
or the other one?
that one. No, the one with the building, please.
Okay.
Yeah. So where the red rectangle is, I will store one of my boats there. I'm going to store my camper there and probably my four-wheeler and other stuff like that. That all my garages are full, and I've got boats sitting outside all winter this year. Luckily, we had an easy winter. On the northeast corner there, there's a very large oak tree, and then if we go another 15 feet, there's two walnuts that are approximately worth $800 right now. But in 5 to 10 years, those three trees are going to be much more valuable. And there is a long-term plan of 10 to 15 years. Those of you that have seen me here before, I have the disabled son with the business at our place for cleaning guns. We would like to make an accessible home, but we want to delay that tree cutting as long as we can, and we're ready to build to get as much value out of those trees as we can to help offset the home. So there is a plan in a 10 to 15 year window when we're getting a little too old to help out and he needs to take care of himself to put an actual primary residence approximately 60 feet to the west of the primary building. So we don't. The biggest thing is those three major trees coming down, we will have to take them down to go the 15 feet. And the plan is for this to be a secondary building, and it will be just storage at this time. I'm agreeing, and I have no problem with the agreement of making the, what did you refer to it as?
It's a zoning commitment.
A zoning commitment that it'll just be storing my campers and boats. There'll be electricity to it, but no water to it. And that's all.
Okay, board, questions of the petitioner?
Okay, now it's just gonna be for your personal use, correct?
Well, personal use, one of my business boats will be in there in the wintertime, but my camper and my four-wheeler and
Well,
everything.
I wondered because when you were here before, I know you ran a guide service.
Right.
And that, I wondered whether it was going to involve.
No, it won't involve doing any of the work out of there. I have the other building I put up on my property, and then my other garage that I do that out of there. Now, at some point, I may take a client hunting on the property, but they won't be using the building. It'll just be strictly for the purpose of hunting.
Have you had a forester or someone out there and mark trees?
I did. It's a Joseph Graber that came over from Antelope. He came over and he painted 37 trees, and he told me I told him I didn't want to take any oaks, but I told him he could take the one oak and the one walnut that'll be the 15-foot cut inside, and that's where he gave me the value of $800 for the walnut tree and about $300 for the oak tree. I did have another oak buyer in. My good oaks are on the south side of the property, and he said the same thing. Even those need 5 years. He had approximately 47 trees that he could cut for pallet wood, but by the time he got semis out and everything else, the 57 trees, even with the 3 up front that had the value, it was only going to be $2,500 in my pocket when it was all said and done. So it's not worth to cut those trees at $2,500 right now when that oak and those 2 walnuts could be $2,500 in 5 years by themselves.
Because I seen that oak was marked. I didn't go further back in the woods.
Oh, you saw some of them
I
marked.
seen a red mark, so I assume you'd had someone out.
Yeah, and I actually contacted him today and told him to hold off. I said, I don't want to do it for that value.
Do you realize having a building out in the open, people drive up and down the road looking for stuff to steal?
Oh,
since you're not there?
we've already bought the cameras and the remotes, and I know I get a good enough signal from my deer cameras. In fact, there'd be public record of the sheriff when my wife beat me out there when the last 2 trespassers, we caught them on our deer cameras and were able to get out there. It turned out to be raccoon hunters that got permission from the landowner in June, and he sold it to us in August. So I told the guy, I said, I understand you had permission, but you need to get permission more than every 6 to 7 months before you step on the property. So I don't think we're going to have an issue with any trespassers. If we do, I'll catch them. Because it's only a 15-minute drive from our house right now. That's why it'll be easy, convenient storage for the camper and the boat. I can just pick it up and drive back home or drive to wherever we're going.
Do you realize what your neighbors do for a living on this property?
I grew up working on a dairy farm. I know exactly what they do. I hear the pigs screaming over on the left corner on the other farm, and I've met her husband before and her father, and I've talked several times during deer hunting season. So yeah, I know exactly what they do. In fact, my deer camera catches the camera. The one tractor goes by probably 6 or 7 times a day right across the front with the feeder and the grinder. So I'm a farm boy. I understand what they're going to do. So I know one day there's going to be manure 10 feet away from my pole barn.
Any other questions, board? Anyone here in opposition to this petition? Anyone in opposition? There's no opposition. Any further discussion? A condition has been suggested if we want to pass this petition that we put a zoning commitment on. Since there is possibly a condition, I'll need a motion to approve this petition with that condition if you so desire.
I'll make a motion that we approve the 24W variance 1 with special conditions of the
Zoning commitment.
Yes, zoning commitment.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Jack, seconded by Doug, that we approve petition 24W variance 1 filed by Jason and Sandra Barbknecht with the condition that's suggested by staff. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? It's approved by a vote of 3 to 1 in favor of the petition. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Once your petition is done, you're free to leave if you so desire. Next petition is petition 24W variance 2, filed by Michael and Rhonda Bauermeister, owners of the subject property, are requesting approval of a development standards variance to allow for encroachment into the front yard, which is the lakeside setback for construction of a new dwelling. The property is located at 7990 North Brown Road in section 36 of Etna Troy Township. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So going to the summary here. This is 7990 North Brown Road, zone LR Lake Residential. What is being proposed, as you said, is to remove the existing dwelling, construct a new one on the lot. The proposed setbacks on the lakeside are 31 feet. The sides are 17.4 and 6 feet. The rear, which is the roadside, because this is lakefront lot, is proposed to be 21.7. The code requires 35, 5, and 15. So the front setback along the lakeside is the one being requested to be varied by approximately 4 feet. Going to the aerial view here for everyone's reference, outlined in blue is the subject property with the existing home seen there. This is the submitted plot plan. The distance, the setback distance that is being varied is this one right here, which is the nearest corner of the residence to the nearest part of the front property line along the lake. Note that this does have some room on this side, on the rear side, to actually shift the house potentially, theoretically, to the west and make everything compliant, because 21.7 feet is more than enough to shift it 4 feet westward to make the front side 35 feet. You'd still be above the 15 feet on the rear. That said, as I understand it, there are a couple different constraints there on that northwest corner that prevent that. One that I noted in the staff report is the idea of allowing enough room for parking along that side, which 15 feet, which is our required minimum, doesn't allow, but it would be nice to actually allow for parking in the driveway and so on. So you can see here the proposed residence compared to the existing residence and how the whole thing lines up. Going to the review criteria, this being a lake variance, we see these frequently without too much impact on public health, safety, morals, general welfare. Of course, you need to make sure that there is something particular to the site. This is not encroaching very much to any particular degree to be concerned with use and value impacts. And then finally, strict application. Basically, as I understand it, they're trying to balance the front setback with the rear setback, and that winds up being what the proposal is. While it could be shifted, it would wind up creating additional impacts there in the northwest corner. I'll let the petitioner explain it a little bit more. So, pretty simple, all things considered. Any questions for me?
All right, petitioner or your representative. Name and address and tell us about your new house.
All right, Mike Bauermeister, 7990 North Brown Road. As you mentioned, we're looking to construct a new house, and then we've got that one corner that would be encroaching approximately 4 feet against the 35 setback. Another note that we have in there is the property line down in the bottom right-hand side does not go all the way down to the water. There's an additional, 26 feet before we actually hit the property line there. And then the other remark about potential shifting is there's a manhole cover up in that top side where he mentioned the proposed parking, which we're running into how close we can get to that as well. So.
All right, board, questions of the petitioner? Anyone here in opposition to this petition? Anyone in opposition? No opposition. Any further discussion, board? This is a variance, so we do not need a motion. One last time, any further discussion? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor of petition 24W variance 2 filed by Michael and Rhonda Bauermeister, all those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? It's approved, 5-0. You got your new home.
Thank you.
Okay. The next petition under new business is petition 24W variance 3 filed by Brooks Langlow, owner, purchaser of the subject property, who is requesting approval of a development standards variance for front yard setbacks, side yard setbacks, minimum lot width, and minimum lot area. The property is located at 2740 West, 700 North, in Section 36 of Etna Troy Township. Staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So going to the summary. This is 2740 West 700 North at the corner of 700 North and Brown Road, just down the road from the case that we just had and only a couple miles away from the case before that. Kind of hanging out in Etna Troy Township tonight, at least to start with. What is being proposed is to split the existing property into 2 platted lots. The petitioner received primary plat approval from the Plan Commission last week, which was conditioned upon lot variances being granted. By lot variances, I mean ones dealing with the standards specific to the lots, lot width and lot area in this case. There are existing structures on the lots that will become encroaching with the required right-of-way dedication. We required right-of-way to be dedicated as part of the plat for a couple different reasons, but that was for the Plan Commission. And because of that, those existing structures wind up being legal non-conforming. They'll wind up being encroaching into the setbacks. In order to avoid the creation of legal non-conforming statuses, the petitioner is also seeking setback variances to remove the to avoid the legal non-conformance, and then also because there is a difference between newly created lots and old lots in terms of required side setbacks. They also want to request variances back down to 5 feet after these lots are platted. Normally, new lots would have 10-foot side yard setbacks. They request to keep the 5-foot setbacks. All of this is shown in those 2 tables, which I'm not going to go into great detail with. They're in your written staff report. In bold, though, are the different pieces that are being proposed to be varied from. I will note that the petitioner is going to be online, and I'll bring up his camera here in a second, as well as having an in-person representative. So highlighted in blue is the existing lot, and this gives you some context of the overall area. Closer view, you can see the 2 structures. House is here, and then there is a storage building that's existing here. These, as proposed, would be split onto each of their own lots, house here and here. And you can see this is the right-of-way that would be dedicated. Additional right-of-way along Brown Road, and then along 700 North, that would basically be the entire right-of-way from the center line. That would be required. Couple notes, and then this is the proposed plat overlaid over the aerial. One note on the lot area variance: only the house lot is deficient. It's a slightly less than the required 10,000 square feet. When you put both lots together, it does exceed 20,000 square feet. So in theory, you could divide it halvesies and make each lot at least 10,000 square feet and avoid that variance. But to do so would take this lot and basically require it to be snaked around and create some sort of finger that goes around that excluded property. So by requesting the variance, they actually make a more compact, usable lot, which is something that is desired in the zoning code. Minimum lot width is the dimension here on the same lot. Because of the required dedication of right-of-way, it winds up being 68 feet wide. Now, if you want to play with definitions and say that the width is actually this way, it definitely exceeds 70 feet. But because the traditional way of measuring, and in the code it says that it should be measured, is the narrow part of the lot, we'd be looking at that, which is 2 feet short. And then, as I said, there are several different setback variances being requested, both for avoidance of legal non-conforming and for resetting that 5-foot setback. I do recommend, this is kind of a housekeeping piece, but I recommend the condition that the plat actually be amended, if this is granted, amended with the new setback line, so it's very clear what the setbacks are on the plat, and then have a cross-reference back to this variance. Something that just makes sense. Again, more housekeeping than anything. Going to the review criteria, because what is proposed is generally not really changing anything other than splitting the property into two pieces, which again has already been reviewed at the Planning Commission. In staff's opinion, there really wouldn't be much of any injury to public health, safety, morals. The additional right-of-way dedication, you could say that there might be traffic a little closer to each one of the structures than there is currently. But to do that, you would have to have additional road widening and so on. So there's multiple things that would need to be going on to that, for that to be even something to be concerned about. Use and value, again, without any changing, not really concerned about that being substantially adverse. And then strict application with practical difficulty. The big one is the dedication of the right-of-way as part of the plat causes setback variances, causes most, if not all, of these different variances that we're looking at tonight. And the surveyor can give you a bit more details. If that wasn't dedicated, what would it look like? Like I said, Mr. Langlow is available online. I'll go ahead and move him over to the screen so y'all can see him. And Brooks, you're on and you're muted right now, but I think you could unmute yourself here in a second. So with that, any questions for me?
Nathan, a quick question. So the structures that are there are planned to be there with this approval. If in the future, say, the lot that has I call it the pole barn, if they'd want to do away with that and put a house in there, would they have to come back and request that variance again? Or, I mean, is this approval for how those structures are there, or? So
the way I have worded the staff report and the way it normally would be applied is it would run with land. The building is, particularly with that storage building, that isn't encroaching tremendously. So it would run with the land, and future structures would follow suit. Now, if you want to condition it that it wouldn't run with the land, you can do so, or if you want to condition it so it's very specific that it does, whichever way, to clarify, by all means do so.
I was just wondering. Thank you.
All right, petitioner, your representative, name and address and what it is you'd like to do, please.
My name is Kevin Michael with Walker and Associates. I'm here on behalf of the petitioners. As Nathan said, the building lines we're creating is because of the additional right-of-way that we always grant with the plats. If we went through and put the road conditions up Brown Road, there'd be a lot of garages and houses that would either be in the right-of-way or very close to the right-of-way, at least closer than what ours is. That's why we're asking for the variance on the lot size. As for the setbacks, it would make it easier down the road that if the house track should happen to burn down and they wanted to rebuild in the same spot, they'd have to come back in and get a variance if the setbacks weren't required at this time. Other than that, I will try to answer any questions you may have.
All right, board, questions of the petitioner? Any questions, board? No questions. Anyone here with questions or opposition in the audience who would like to speak? Anyone with questions or opposition in the audience who'd like to speak? There's no one in opposition. Okay, board. Chance for any further discussion? If not, Nathan has suggested a condition or any other conditions you wish to add to this petition. We need a motion. So if we approve this, all setbacks that they're requesting is made permanent with this lot. Is that a fair statement?
That is the way, because yes, that's the way it would be taken. It would run with land as is. Right, if you want to make sure that that's clear as part of your motion,
No, that's fine. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it.
Okay.
I just want to make sure if I understand it right. So the barn comes down and they could build a new house in the same footprint.
or within the
Bounce.
approved setbacks.
within the setbacks, within that setbacks.
Yes.
If you want to approve this, I think we need that condition, so we need a motion. If we don't get a motion, it'll die.
We don't want it to die, do we?
That condition that's stated would allow for that, right? That you have in there?
Yeah, it's not quite as explicit as what you guys have been discussing, but that's the intent, is to put it on the plat so it's very clear what the setbacks are for this particular case. Again, if you want to kind of expound on it to make sure it's clear.
Do you feel it would be helpful to have, if you put the plat be amended with the setback lines as approved and a notation of this variance approval, this applies to all future structures or building in that location?
Okay.
If that clarifies it?
Works for me. Liz, do you have any issue with it?
No.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and make a motion. We approve 24W variance 3 developmental standards variance by the petitioner Brooks Langwell and Lake Residential with the suggested condition that the plat be amended with the setback lines as approved and a notation of this variance approval. That this variance applies to all future building construction on the properties.
Moved by Kelley, seconded by
Second.
Joe, that we approve petition 24W variance 3 filed by Brooks Langlow with the added condition that's in the staff report and the addition of all future structures on this location. Any further discussion? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Was that in favor, Kelley?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't know if you got me or not. Yep.
Been approved 4-1 with it being approved. 4 in favor and 1 against. All right.
Thank you.
Yep. The next petition under new business is petition 24WSE2 filed by Daniel and Deborah Michael, owners of the subject property, who are requesting a special exception approval for a Class 3 confined feeding operation in the AGP zoning district. The property is located at 8980 South, 350 West, in Section 19 of Washington Township. Staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is probably going to be a little bit longer of a case. I know I've got more slides than last couple variances. So going to the summary. This is 8980 South 350 West, zoned AGP agricultural production. The Michaels received AGP rezoning on their properties in 2021, and actually I believe there's one additional property that's not in their name that's also zoned AGP next to this. This particular piece is in Section 19 of Washington Township, due south of the greater Tunker area. What is being requested is a special exception for a Class 3 confined feeding operation. More specifically, a new barn is being added to the existing confined feeding operation at that location. The existing CFO has existed here since at least 2004, I think maybe even before that. The 2 bigger barns were constructed in 2004 and 2009, currently making a total per items numbers of 4,420 head of wean to finish hogs which equates out to 1,768 animal units. You have not seen those approvals before because when they came through, when those barns came through, it predated the requirement for cumulative counting of animal units. Basically, each barn was standalone, was the way the code was administered. That's not the way we do it anymore. The code is very clear that animal units are cumulative. So we're here tonight on that, and because we've got additional animal units being added. So what is proposed then is the proposed CFO located in a 122-foot by 285-foot barn west of the existing barns, west of the existing farm, to hold up to 4,400 head of, again, wean to finish hogs, which equates out to 1,760 animal units. IDEM permit was approved a couple weeks ago. I forget exactly when, but it has already been approved. One note on that, the staff report as originally written had 4,000 head of wean to finish hogs, not 4,400. It was brought to our attention. That was our mistake. We were basing our numbers on preliminary information and didn't realize that it kind of changed with the IDEM filing. So 4,400 is correct. Either number requires a Class 3 CFO and really is not that huge of a change in the total animal unit count relative to the scale that we're looking at. Going through various zoning criteria, here are the various setbacks and separations. This table is there on page 1 of the written staff report. These are the minimum setbacks and separations required for any size CFO, minimum for any size CFO. So natural lake of 40 acres or more. I believe the nearest one is Larwell Lake. I could be wrong, maybe Troy Cedar or something like that, more than 10 miles away. Recorded major residential subdivision. Again, major residential subdivision is any subdivision existing when the code was passed in 2018 or new since then of 3 lots or more. And while we do have several different recorded subdivisions in the area, most of them are 1 or 2 plats. The nearest one that was 3 lots or more was about 2 miles away to the northwest called Madison Grove. Nearest offsite residence minimum is 660 feet. And the proposed nearest is 690 feet, which is a residence to the west. And the next nearest ones are to the northeast, and then more than a quarter mile to the south. Open waterway, nearest one is to the northeast. You go through a few woods and up and down some hills to get to that waterway. We do have tiles in the area, particularly private tiles, but the nearest open waterway is that far away. Property lines, you can see those distances there, and then RR, MR, LR zoning, those are your minimums there, and I believe the nearest of any of those is again farther north up in Tunker. We have some RR zoning at about 4,500 feet away. I included this slide just for reiteration of the animal unit calculations. It's a total of 8,820 head of wean to finish hogs. The zoning code, the animal units, you could do a blending of ages between the weaned, the smaller hogs up to the finishers, and try and figure out how much would be 0.2 versus 0.4. You have some reduction in numbers over time and so on. For administrative purposes and to be conservative, we just take the 0.4 times the total head count, and that's where our numbers are. Even if you did some blending, we would be just over, I believe we would be just over that Class 3 cutoff at 3,000 animal units anyway. So again, for conservative sake and ease of administration, we just take the 0.4 times the total head count. And then finally, the 3,528 total animal units requested Class 3 CFOs start at 3,001, go up to 12,000. More than 12,000 trips you into the Class 4 CFO, which we have none of in the county. And then Class 3 CFOs are special exceptions in the AGP zoning district. Aerial views and reference material here. This is the subject property for the Michaels. Closer view of the area, the existing CFO. You'll see that in the site plan as well in a second, but this barn, that barn, that barn, and that barn are all animal barns, and then we have the Michaels home here as well, and other farm-related, agricultural-related outbuildings. This is the aerial view including wetlands, contours, floodplains, and drains. And you can see that this is, there is rolling topography, but there are no legal drains on this property. The nearest one, I'm not even sure where the nearest one is. I think it's to the northwest there as I look at this. Wetlands, actual wetlands and not ponds. We'd be looking farther east towards the open drain that I mentioned previously. Floodplains, nearest one is there in the far upper left corner. And again, contours, it's relatively flat but rolling topography. We have flatter areas in the county, but so I do have a handful of oblique photos just to give you a few more angles, not so much angles, they're all from the south, but a few more perspectives of what's the existing. This is relatively close. You'll see here on the south side of the existing animal barns, a tree line. That is what I mentioned in the proposed conditions and discussion about buffering. To me as staff, it kind of makes sense that this is a large building. It could be somewhat out of character even with agricultural buildings, which vary tremendously in size. And so doing some sort of screening to break that visual appearance up could be quite helpful for the surrounding area. And just extending that existing screening that Michaels already have is a natural starting point. If the board feels like there should be more, totally leave that up to you for discussion or something else. Again, that's your discretion. Another view here showing a few of the properties to the south. And I thought I had one to the west as well, but apparently I either skipped over it or neglected to include it. So my apologies, I only had two. This is the site plan as extracted from the IDEM filing. And so this is what is being proposed. P1 is the proposed structure. They do have another driveway with turnaround proposed onto 900 South. E1, all of the E buildings are existing. E1, E2, E3, and E7 are the existing animal barns. And you can see the other outbuildings in the house there as well. And then P2, I believe, is a mortality structure that is also proposed. All of the setbacks are based on P1, though. If we included P2, there'd be very little difference, but P1's the major structure. We received at least one comment, and I think maybe more than that, about the Michaels owning several different properties and what the effect would be if this was proposed on one of their other properties that they own. So for your reference and the audience's reference, I went ahead and mapped the Michaels properties. These are all zoned AGP. As I mentioned, they rezoned all of their properties a few years ago. And so all the properties outlined there in pink are owned by the Michaels. Any of them theoretically could have the same size barn going on them. This barn by itself on any other property would be treated as a standalone CFO and would be a Class 2 CFO which under HEP zoning is a permitted use and would not require special exception through the board. It would just require the standard building permit review and all of the other development review that would be normal. Also on here are existing CFO locations. So up here, the blue dot for the Michaels existing CFO, and then we have two neighbors. The Michaels have two neighbors that also have CFOs, one of which you can see there is surrounded by Michael's property as well. So I'm not sure exactly what this is showing, but again, because it was brought up as a question of what the effect would be, I'm giving you the information for that discussion in case it's relevant for everyone's discussion tonight. So going on to the suggested conditions, actually I guess going back to the previous comment, I made it in the staff report as well. One thing that you really probably should weigh out as part of your thinking is the thought of is it more appropriate to have fewer but perhaps larger of a use, or more but smaller of a use? And in this case it's CFOs, but it could be solar fields, it could be wireless towers, whatever it may be. So this is a common theme, but again tonight the idea of what's being proposed, which is kind of trying to conglomerate the use in one location as opposed to starting to separate it among more but smaller locations. So kind of suggest that that might be something you give some mind to. So go back to suggested conditions. Number one, standard condition that it's granted as, if it is granted, that it be granted as presented and per the site plan. Number two, the limitation on animal units to the maximum as described in the submittal. Anything more than that would require coming back. The landscape screen, this is directly excerpted from the buffering section of the zoning code, either 6-foot conifer trees, 6-foot conifers trees, spaced no farther than 20 feet apart, basically in line with that existing landscape screen that Michael's already have. Screening the western end may also be appropriate depending on how that might lay out. And then finally, any other mitigation requirements that you may find necessary as the public hearing goes on tonight. Fencing, architectural issues, whatever, things that address concerns brought up. I won't go into detail on the criteria because I'm starting to lose my voice, but all of that is in the written staff report, and hopefully you've had a chance to digest that. Any questions for me?
Nathan, could you bring the map back up again with all the colors, the hot pink that showed all the Michaels properties and highlighted?
I have lots of colorful
I like
maps.
this, yeah. So since you brought it up, you referenced comments that we received, or a comment that we received wondering why the Michaels could not put it on another property that they own. Could you verify, based on the address from that comment, where that address is located in relation to the Michaels CFO operation?
No, I can't, because I was kind of generalizing the comment. But are you specifically referring to the one that you received tonight?
Yes.
I can, if you give me a second.
Please.
Brent, can you look up that address?
Thank you.
I assume you're talking the Fort Wayne address?
Yes.
7916 East, 500 South, 92, which is Whitley County, Fort Wayne, Indiana, 46818. I think that's what Kelley's representing.
So for for your reference, and this was related to the person who submitted the comment. And I will say this was not the only person who commented. That's why I wanted to make sure which one you were referencing. But this is that address, and in relation to the case tonight, the petitioner's property is, I'm losing my bearings here, over here, right there.
Any gauge on how many miles that is? Is that within the notification area or outside the notification area?
It is outside of the required notification area, correct. It is still within the county, obviously, but it is outside of the notification area. So if you're looking at distance, 63,000 feet, give or take.
10 miles? 8 to 10 miles? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, board or the staff? Before I ask the petitioner to come up, I want to talk to the opposition. I assume there's opposition here. So, we're not ready for opposition. We're going to have the petitioner make their presentation. After the petitioner has made their presentation, anyone may ask questions only first. You can ask questions of the petitioner first. After people are done asking questions to the petitioner, anyone can make any general statement they wish as the petitioner is making. And when that's done, the petitioner may rebut anything that has been said if they so desire. So we're going to hear the petitioner. After that, you may ask questions. Then you may make a presentation yourself. And after that, the petitioner may rebut. So with that said, petitioner or your representative?
I am Melissa Lehman with Agronomic Solutions, 336 East Lake Street, Topeka, Indiana.
Dan Michael, 8980 South, 350 West, South Whitley.
All righty. And we are here this evening because Dan is a family farmer and he farms hogs and he wanted to add another barn to his property. And so he actually came, we've been working on this for a year and a half, 2 years. We kind of got started on it, and then with the economy and everything, kind of laid it to the side. And then came back again in the fall after harvest and was ready to get going again. We turned in the actual application item on December 27th, mailed out the notices to the required half-mile people. We had a typo in the address, so I remailed the notices on January 8th, which I know was a little bit confusing. But like I said, and then I then went through, processed the application. We actually have the full item approval. It was approved on February 14th. In case y'all haven't worked with item very much, they're very particular and fun to deal with. But no, so they have all kinds of extra safety things in for this new barn. He has a perimeter tile that we have to test. He'll have to have an engineer on site during construction to have a PE certification and all that kind of things. One of the issues that I wanted to address is, I don't know if, I guess it doesn't even matter. You don't need to put that other map up. But Dan lives here, and he's the one taking care of the pigs. And it only makes sense from a farmer to keep all of his animals together from a biosecurity standpoint, from feed deliveries, from trucks on the road, from loading and unloading. It doesn't make a lot of sense for him to have barns scattered all over. The other thing is for every site he has, it would be a separate item permit. With this, we can add this farm to his existing item permit, which, yes, makes him a bigger farm, but he has a big operating records binder that he has to keep and all the records. And if he has multiple farms spread out, then that's multiple different binders and multiple different inspections, and it just makes his life a lot more stressful. So it's easier to have the piggies close to home because he's the one taking care of them, because this is a family farm. So, I mean, that's the reason why we chose this location. And we do meet all the county setbacks, we meet all the state setbacks, and have met all of the state reviews. So I think, do you have anything?
Well, the only thing I want to add is the fans and the way the situation will be. The east 7 fans are facing towards the west, and the proposed will be facing towards the east. So we'll have our dust or our end fans, and as you can see, it's not very square with the road, but if you had an elevation, you'd understand it. And then the green at the bottom is a waterway that between there and theirs was the proposed trees and stuff, and as far as blocking the views, if you want to say. The only correction I had was you had said that E1, that is actually a pole building. It's not a hog building, and it's not that big a deal. But that's kind of the reason that it looks in such a weird shape, is that we're kind of control the surrounding area, and we already have the trees around it of the existing. And the only mistake I made was I planted them very, very young, and the drought of 12, and we lost a few. So we'll plant bigger ones or whatever. But that was the main thing I wanted to add, was the reason we wanted it in that position. But
So to either petitioners or staff, how many property owners received letters of notification?
It's right here. Well, IDEM requires us to give proof of the date that we mailed them and everybody that we mailed them to. And
So-
we did it twice because we had to renotice because of the mistake that we had.
To clarify, are you asking for item?
No, the
notice or zoning
notification
notice?
on that. Yeah, I'm sorry, on the
I don't know.
permanent road.
On the petition for tonight, there were 10 properties notified.
And just because I brought it up, what was the item notice number?
8, 8, and 3. So that would be 19.
Was there either out of those 10 or those 19 any opposing?
I didn't receive any comments from any of the ones that were directly mailed notices from.
Yeah, to the ones that IDEM, we had one person that voted in opposition.
Okay, I appreciate the transparency on that.
I'd say one in opposition.
And when you rezoned to AGP in 2021, do you recall, was there any opposition at that meeting to the rezoning?
I don't think there was.
Okay.
I didn't have a chance to go back and look at the records of the meeting itself. But again, from my memory, if we did, it was just, you know what, I don't think there was anything. I think we had some comments.
Okay, and
but not negative.
I was just looking at the AGP zoning, and it does talk about intensive agricultural uses, and I know confined feeding operation class 3 is a special exception, but I know the signs are up down there and everything as well.
Well, a lot
that you
of
have to put
our
up, so.
thought process when we did that was for our sons down the road. There's more and more city. I probably shouldn't word it that way, but that don't understand. I know I had a neighbor, he got called for working too late, 8 o'clock. We've had calls for, on a windy fall, husk going in people's shrubbery, but it's the AGP was kind of a protection.
Sure. And that's why it's here, to protect from conflicting land uses, so I just wanted to clarify that and make sure. So, but nothing on the 10 that went out notification for this?
I would say 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You need to stay here to answer questions, or do you want us to sit?
Are you done with your presentation?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Staff, any questions from the board to the petitioner? Any more questions at this time? We'll have one more chance later. Okay, at this time, opposition may ask questions of the petitioner. You may ask questions if you have any. After that, you can make a presentation of your own, just as the petitioner done. Any opposition with questions?
All I'm saying, can I say?
You may ask questions. You have to come to the podium.
Okay.
State your name and have a seat here in the front row, would you please? Questions only at this time of the petitioner. Then you can make a general statement after the questions are complete. State your name and address, please.
Scott Stoner, 9139 South, 350 West. I still think 8,000. You know, 8,000's too many in one spot. I think it'd be better if they're spread out.
Okay.
He's got to haul the mower, all the manure over that way anyways on other farms.
Okay.
Maybe I overstepped my bounds by the way I presented myself, but.
Okay. Okay. Is that all you have? Any questions, board, of this gentleman?
When I bought the property in 1991, there was no hogs over on the opposite corner. The first building I remember going up was in 99. And they never said one word about the smell of what's there.
Okay.
But I think 4,000 is too many to put what's already there. 4,000 more. I think it should be spreading the buildings around just like the manure.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Anyone else wish to ask questions of the petitioner? Anyone else? Anyone else in opposition that would like to make any general statements? Anyone else? General statements. The podium is open. If you wish to ask questions or make any general statements, you may.
My name's Bill Liu, 8449 South, 350 West. If you can gather from the address, if you want to bring the picture a little broader, bigger area back up. We live directly 1/2 mile northeast of the facilities. Actually, when I was doing chores tonight, I could see the hog barns. We've lived there for 24 years. Had to look back. So if you know where the prevailing winds are from the southwest, we don't get the smell. When they haul manure, there is smell. I have a few calves. When I haul manure, I'm not so vain that thinks my shit doesn't stink. I know it stinks. So I don't see a problem with it. They've always been good neighbors. They know, they have to follow more regulations to build this. I don't have a problem with it. And we live right there. Our property is right across the road, just to the north. So I don't have a problem with it. We own 2 properties there, 2 houses. We live there full time. That is, my parents' farm, bought that in 67. We've lived there 24 years. The hog buildings have come. Didn't bother us. That's just part of living there. And I have no problem with this. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Okay.
My name's John Mann. I live 2900 West, 900 South, 1/4 mile east of Dan and Deb's property. I've lived there since '89. I think maybe 10, 15 days out of the year I'll smell hog crap when he's hauling it down the road. Otherwise, I don't have no problem with it.
Okay.
I do want a free Christmas tree.
Anyone else? The podium is free. Anyone else wish to speak for or against or any other questions? One last time. Anyone else wish to speak? All right. Petitioner, you may rebut anything that was said if you so desire. State your name, please, first. I mean, you're there.
Dan Michael.
Okay.
As far as the manure hauling, we haul almost as much to the west as we do the other direction. So the farther east we would move it, we would be going past the facility to go to the fields that we use. We did look at other places to put it, but this truly does affect the least amount of people. Obviously, we have CFO over on Meridian Road, so we don't want to put another one with that ground that we have, and with the ground that we rent and own. It just makes sense to put it here and less miles on the road. That's all I had to add.
Okay, thank you. Okay, board, questions of the petitioner or questions of the opposition? You're okay with all the conditions?
Pardon me?
You're okay with all the conditions?
Yes, actually, when the gentleman made the statement, we're going to do the trees, but we're also going to have some more area that we don't know what to do with. And with my grandchildren, we've talked about starting a Christmas tree farm. And he thinks he's entitled to one. I don't know that much about it yet. There's things we're going to, as I said before, the trees that are there now, we bought from little saplings in 2012 and had a drought.
Mm-hmm.
We can't, you just lost too many. It was too much work. Couldn't keep it watered and stuff like that. So the neighbor north of the gentleman that lives north, if you look at two more places, he actually has a nursery I've already talked to him about. The trees, and actually even moving some of those that we have there. So kind of already started there.
Thank you. Any more questions, board? Okay, any discussion on the voting? Nathan has suggested 4 conditions, and the petitioner has already stated he has no problem with them. This is a special exception. We need a motion with the conditions in it that you desire.
I move we approve 24 WSE2 from Daniel and Deborah Michael with the suggested conditions 1 through 4 as listed per the staff report.
I would second that.
As I look at the conditions, number 4 is just a recommendation that the board discuss other mitigation requirements as necessary. So if you want to leave that one off, you can.
I'll revise my motion for suggested conditions 1 through 3 per the staff report, please.
And the animal units in the second line is how many? 3528?
3528, correct.
So we have a motion by Kelley, second by Jack, with the 3 conditions in the staff report, with the initial number in condition 2 changed to the current 3528. We have a motion. All those in favor of the petition all those in favor, let's start over again. All those in favor of petition 24 WSE2 filed by Daniel and Deborah Michael with the following 3 conditions in the staff report. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Go to work. It's approved 5-0 with all attending members voting in favor. Any other business to come before the board?
I do not have any. Do you have anything for me?
We're adjourned.